basketball, such a unique entity, is just what goes on in your own league every single night. You know, whether it's Boston College going into Syracuse, being undefeated, or it's SMU going into Temple after we play them. And Temple is a team capable of beating anyone on a given night. After they beat SMU, they played at Memphis to the wire. And so they're a very well-coached basketball team that on any given night, anybody can beat anyone, and that's where we harp so much on at the defensive end. And against Cincinnati, for 35 minutes, we played the type of defense that could beat anybody on a given night. In the last 5 minutes, we reverted back to giving up the paint, and it almost cost us the game. But for 35 minutes, I was very, very pleased with the way we performed defensively. So we're going to be very much emotionally and physically ready for this game, ready for the challenge, and we'll be very excited for it because we only have 2 home games left, and that draws a close to a great group of seniors who have not let up after 2 Final Fours, and that speaks admirably of what they're all about.
You focus on one game, but with a quick turnaround on the backside of this, do you do anything different this week going into this game?
No, not really. You sort of know everybody you're going to play. You know that although you have 1 day prep for Memphis, Cincinnati did an awesome job at Memphis by stopping their transition. You have no chance of beating Memphis unless you corral their transition game.
You got 6 straight games with less than 10 turnovers. You guys are playing first in the country. Why has this team been so good at taking care of the ball and valuing possessions?
It's probably going to seem very silly to you, looking from the outside in, but I thought in the beginning of the year turnovers were going to be a problem the way we were practicing. So we have, if you come in our gym, you'll see everybody's name on the wall, and you'll see tape all over the place. And for every time we turn the ball over, we take a piece of tape, and we have a plus-minus system. And obviously, if you get an offensive rebound, it's a plus. If you block a shot, it's a plus. All defensive things. But we put a heavy emphasis on, even if we were running, say, Temple's offense, and as the team's running through the offense, they turn it over, even though you're running, that's a negative. So we put heavy emphasis on the things we thought were a problem, and I think our guys really bought into taking care of the basketball at all times.
How much of a factor is that in what this team's been able to achieve?
I think anytime you're a pressing running team, it becomes a possession game. So steals, forced turnovers, offensive rebounds are such a big deal. That's why we're #1 scoring in the conference, because we take care of the basketball.
There was a lot of chatter after the game, during the game, about the officiating. Have you had a chance to look back at it, kind of maybe catch a few places where it seemed like it was kind of an off?
There were 7 calls that were not right in the game. 4 against us, 3 against them, and I could probably pick that on every game. I think I said this on the radio show last night. I think the officiating today is no different than it was when I started 30 years ago. It's just now you have 3 analysts or 3 broadcasters on the game that scrutinize every call, and the game's on television much more than it was back then, so refereeing is part of the game. Now, refereeing college or professional basketball is the most difficult for any official. In football, it's a lot easier because the fans and the analysts don't see the holding at all times. They could maybe guess at it, or you could see the offside somewhat, but you don't see. In basketball, it's right there for you to see, so you know the mistake. Now, let's take the Syracuse game, Duke. Guy goes in for Duke, gets hit across the arm, goes to dunk the ball. Duke fans think it's a foul. Syracuse fans don't think it's a foul. If you watch it, you draw your own conclusion. Then you go back a week later and you see Syracuse Duke and offensive foul charge block call. Jim Boeheim thinks it's the worst call in the history of college basketball. Some people may not be quite as dramatic as that, but just to show you how to disagree with, if you look at Clark Kellogg, and Seth Davis, Clark thought it was a good call, Seth didn't think it was a good call. So what do the referees to think when they're making that call? Two guys watching the game in slow-mo disagree. How could the referee necessarily get it right or wrong? Well, the answer to the question is, it's a fast-moving game being refereed by 40 and 50-year-olds, some 30, up and down the court. And there's a lot of things that come into play with that a judgment call, especially with a charged block or a block shot, whatever it may be. I know in our game, it wasn't Cincinnati versus Louisville, it wasn't refereed like it's been refereed this year. Was refereed like a Big East game. Well, it's a sold-out, hostile environment. Fans are yelling on every call. Stephen Van Treese got thrown out of bounds by the arm right where the official was right there. Got thrown out, just hooked and thrown out of bounds. We're going to block a shot, we get a piece of the body. A kid calls a timeout as he's falling out of bounds. Should be a technical foul. No call. Ball going out of bounds. So that happens in every single basketball game, regardless of how it's officiated. If it's called tight, it happens that way. You know, you see it all the time in every game, and especially because the analysts years ago never commented on officials. Now they're commenting except at the NBA level, they don't comment on it. Unless you're Jeff Van Gundy, they don't comment too much. But you know, it's just the nature of it. You know, the analysts today get paid to comment on the officials as well as play. But it's been going on for so many years. The game was well officiated. There were mistakes on calls by both teams. I'm being objective. Some calls Cincinnati should have got, some calls we should have got that we didn't get. But it's fair. As long as it's fair, that's all you care about. It's when you think the crowd gets to the officials. Throughout my years, I've seen that happen. That bothers you when you go home at night. But unless it's that. But I pay no attention to officiating. I really don't. Now, I wish we were at Pittsburgh and the ball was clearly off the Pittsburgh player's head, I think it was, and it was under 2 minutes and we didn't get the call and it cost us the game. I wish they could have got back to the monitor to get it right that night. But they didn't have that at their disposal then.
How does the program communicate bad calls or calls they disagree with? Do you send a film or what?
You send an edit, and 95% of the time they agree with you. If ref didn't mean to make the wrong call, you know, what are you gonna do? It's part of the game. You see it in football. You see now what happens in basketball. You see the extreme. You see it happen against Syracuse and against Duke. One of the better college games played in college basketball this year. If I said to you, how many people here think it was a block? How many people think it was a charge? You'd probably get a 50-50 response. And then if you asked, was that a good block shot by the Syracuse player a week before, or wasn't it? That's just the way it is. We, the referees, don't have slow-mo to go through it. And to tell you the truth, I can't tell on that charge block. One angle I think it's a block, the other angle I think it's a charge, and it's difficult to really tell. And so, you know, when I now watch the guy falling out of bounds, calling a timeout, or Van Treese being, I didn't complain at the time when Van Treese got thrown out of bounds because I couldn't see it. But when I watch it on tape, I see it readily. And you see the guy going for a block shot. I thought it was a perfect block, and he got a piece of his head, and you see that part of it. But, you know, they still had a 3-point lead. We only made one free throw. They still had a 3-point lead with a minute something to go in the game. So I could tell the game at Cincinnati at home here, I can tell you 8 bad calls in that game as well, the one we lost. And you can do it all the time, you know, but referees are referees. It's a tough, tough game to officiate. And it really hurts when it's the end of the game. Nobody ever really complains about the calls in the first 10 minutes of the game. You know, you all don't remember Wayne Blackshear getting knocked over and it was called a block or just ignoring it in a game that happened a long time ago because it was early in the game. It's only late in the game that people remember the officiating. The same thing in football.